Millions of years ago, Shinnok, one of the Elder Gods, turned on his fellow deities and invaded the Earth Realm. Raiden and the Elder Gods stopped Shinnok, locked him up in the Nether Realm.
Welcome everyone to our IAT 210 Let's Play project. The game we have chosen is Mortal Kombat X, also known as MKX. Our rationale for the game choice comes from our experience and joy from playing the game. Before starting, we will present some brief history of the series. Mortal Kombat is a video game franchise originally developed by Midway Games' Chicago studio in 1992. Following Midway's bankruptcy, the Mortal Kombat development team was acquired by Warner Brothers and turned into NetherRealm Studios. Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment currently owns the rights to the franchise and rebooted it in 2011. The series has a reputation for high levels of bloody violence, including most notably its fatalities, being finishing moves requiring a sequence of button inputs to perform. The fatalities, more specifically Sub-Zero's head rip fatality, in part led to the creation of the ESRB video game rating system, which was implemented in 1994. Moving on to some interesting facts. Mortal Kombat was the very first game ever to implement the juggling concept. This refers to the fact that when players are thrown into the air, they can no longer defend themselves and are vulnerable to more damage. It was also the first fighting game to use digitalized sprites as characters, which means it uses real-life actors instead of hand-drawn characters. Another fact is the game has the longest-running voice actor in a video game series. The 1995 Mortal Kombat movie is still the highest-grossing feature film based off a video game. Mortal Kombat in its entirety totals 20 games and 3 collections. All of this speaks volumes about how far this game has gone for the genre. Mortal Kombat X is a fighting game that falls under the genre of action. The game is available on various platforms, for example, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. The mobile version of the game is playable on Android and iOS. The game falls under Ludus, this being structured and controlled play with specific rules. We feel like the game definition, according to Saline and Zimmerman, is a system in which players engage in an artificial conflict defined by rules that results in a quantifiable outcome. Like most games, Mortal Kombat X has rules and goals. Short-term goals being the ability to damage an opponent by performing flashy combos, thus reducing the enemy's HP and winning the current round. The long-term goals is defeating the opponent and winning the matchup. For game rules, rules are treated as if they are real and have real consequences. The magic circle of a game is the space within which a game takes place. In this case, the magic circle is established after the start button to access the game menu is pressed. At this point, the theme music for the game overtakes the player and immerses them into the game space. There are 4 forms of play, which are Aegon, Alia, Linux, and Mimicry. These 4 forms of play can be combined and are not restricted to one genre or the other. MKX is Aegon because it is heavily a competition-based game, the goal being eliminating your opponent. When analyzing game types, it is evident that MKX is an action game, defined as games that offer intensity of action as the primary attraction. Reflex responses is the primary skill needed to play Mortal Kombat. Examples of gamer motivations are excitement, destruction, competition, and challenge. Excitement is described as fast-paced, intense, and provides a constant adrenaline rush. Gameplay must be full of action, thrills, and reward players with rapid reaction times. For example, those who are able to manipulate frame data are most likely to succeed in high-level matchups. Players motivated by destruction prefer agents of chaos. An example of this is seen by MKX's fatalities, brutalities, and overall extreme gore. Competition can be defined as players who enjoy competing against other players in duels and matches. This is exemplified in the ESL Pro League tournament held for MKX competitions. Those who like challenge rely heavily on skills and ability. Let's talk game mechanics. Here we will only discuss 3 types of rules. Operational rules are basic rules the player should know in order to play the game. This can be moving the character using the joystick or D-pad. A foundational rule found in MKX would be the reduction in the character's HP when taking damage. An example being the gain in super meter when inflicting or receiving damage. Behavioral rules are those which most people naturally understand as a part of good sportsmanship. In this game, low poking constantly can be classified as poor sportsmanship. Another area of game mechanics is skills, and there are 3 types. Physical skills related to MKX are ways in which players are able to manipulate the controller. This skill differs when considering the use of the regular controller versus the arcade stick setup. Mental skills required are memory, observation, and decision-making. Again, this ties into the use of frame rate data, where players need memory and observation in order to make a decision. In terms of social skills, reading an opponent, predicting their movement, and coordinating actions are integral. The next section of game mechanics is chance. MKX is not a game of chance, but rather a game of skill. Games of skill are those where the outcome is determined mainly by skill or skills rather than by chance. Most games of skill also involve a degree of chance, but MKX is an exception to this. Looking at game space, we find that MKX is 2D and continuous. Now let's move on to the game objects, attributes, and states. The two main objects in the game are the characters and interactables. For the character, the static attribute would be their voice, and the dynamic attribute is seen in the different types of movement. The fighting arena contains interactables. The static attribute would be the color, and the dynamic attribute is found in the change of the shape when utilized in combat. The last game mechanic we discuss is actions. Operative actions are basic actions. One example is the 4 basic attacking buttons: front punch, front kick, and back kick. Resultant actions are strategic actions, more specifically, the strategic consequences of certain operative actions. In MKX, hitting buttons in a particular predefined order allows one to perform combo strings. Gamification is using game design and systems that primarily support non-game tasks to make them more fun, engaging, and motivating. In general, games have reward schedules, and in MKX there are 2 types: fixed ratio and fixed interval. In fixed ratio reward schedule, after a set number of responses, players are rewarded. For example, after winning a set number of rounds, in this case 2, the player wins the matchup. In the fixed interval reward schedule, after a certain amount of time, players are rewarded. Each round has a set time of 90 seconds, and once this time is up, the player with the higher HP is awarded the round. To summarize, after each duel/matchup, players receive coins that can be used to unlock various items in-game. These unlocks are found in the crypt. The unlocks can range from additional fatalities, brutalities, concept art, stage music, etc. Leaderboards and achievements are standard as seen in most games. Ranking higher on the leaderboard requires a higher score, and achievements are found in the form of trophies, which motivates the player to try different characters and styles of play. Some more gamification that allows for engaging, motivating, and higher levels of enjoyment include X-rays and the variation system. X-rays are stunning visuals that do high levels of damage and are easy to land, but meter consumed is better used elsewhere. The variation system affects special moves and sometimes normal attacks of your character. Each character has 3 variations. Variation selection is key to matchups, so we recommend picking one that suits your playstyle. Now let's look at the game's narrative, which is defined as a chain of events linked by cause and effect and occurring in time and space. We will define 2 types of characters, the protagonist and the antagonist. The main character is defined as the protagonist. In this case, the protagonist is Cassie Cage, the daughter of Johnny Cage and Sonya Blade. The character that works against the protagonist, aka the bad guy, would be Shinnok, a fallen elder god waging war on the realms. MKX has a story mode where players take part in a chapter-based storyline. Although the characters the player controls differ per chapter, there is still an obvious protagonist and antagonist. The type of conflict present within the game is an external conflict, defined as person versus person. The protagonist, Cassie Cage, opposes the actions of Shinnok and his army of undead revenants. Emergent complexity is found within the story mode of the game. This kind of difficulty is not present when the gamer begins playing, but emerges along the way. As the gamer meets success, the game increases its level of difficulty, making the challenge a little more interesting every time. We see an example of this within boss fights. Initially, matchups are fair and are not time-consuming. When a player progresses towards facing Shinnok in his demonic form, the level of difficulty is increased, and hours can be spent just to defeat one opponent. Our final section of this Let's Play discusses the game business model. There are 3 major elements of video game business models. First, the product strategy, which describes the product itself, its value to customers, as well as the various design choices related to the player experience. Mortal Kombat X combines cinematic presentation with new gameplay to deliver a fully connected experience that launches players into a persistent online contest where every fight matters. For the first time in the series, Mortal Kombat X gives players the ability to choose from multiple variations of each character, impacting both strategy and fighting style. Players step into a story showcasing some of the game's most prolific characters, including Sub-Zero and Scorpion, while introducing new generations of fighters as the game takes place in later years. An element of the game business model is the distribution model, which describes how the company markets the product and brings it to the consumer. The prime marketing period kicks in when the game is close to its release date. For MKX, it was in March and early April. That's when NetherRealm Studios started selling heavily the cross-generational aspect, showing new characters, particularly descendants of existing characters. They focus on advertising the most interesting feature of the game in the 2 time periods where a game gets the most press, when it is announced and when it is about to be released. The last element of the game business model is revenue logic, which describes how the company generates revenue and finances its operations. The company NetherRealm Studios sells the game to consumers for a fixed price depending on the platform they purchase it for. Once a copy of the game is purchased, there is no additional cost for playing. Offers are available throughout the upcoming months and years in terms of downloadable content, also known as DLC. Some DLCs for the game are free while others cost money. Combat packs are purchasable DLCs for playable characters, each containing 4 new combatants. There were 2 combat packs released after the game had come out. MKX also offers a few character skins that can be purchased with proceeds used for funding the ESL Pro League tournaments. Later, a final version of the game called Mortal Kombat XL was released, consisting of all combatants and additional costumes. So that wraps up our IAT 210 Let's Play project. Hope you enjoyed.